On Rye, Chapter 18. Frank liked airplanes. He lent me all his pulp magazines about World War I. The best was Flying Aces. The dogfights were great, the Spads and the Fokkers mixing it. I read all the stories. I didn't like the way the Germans always lost, but outside of that, it was great. I liked going over to Frank's place to borrow and return the magazines. His mother wore high heels and had great legs. She sat in a chair with her legs crossed and her skirt pulled high. Frank's father sat in another chair. His mother and father were always drinking. His father had been a flyer in World War I and had crashed. He had a wire running down inside one of his arms instead of a bone. He got a pension, but he was all right. When he came in, he always talked to us. "How are you doing, boys? How's it going?" Then we found out about the air show. It's going to be a big one. Frank got hold of a map and we decided to get there by hitchhiking. I thought he'd probably never make it to the air show, but Frank said we would. His father gave us the money. We went down to the boulevard with our map and we got a ride right away. There was an old guy and his lips were very wet. He kept licking his lips with his tongue. He had on an old checkered shirt which he had buttoned to the throat. He wasn't wearing a necktie. He had strange eyebrows which curled down into his eyes. "My name's Daniel," he said. Frank said, "This is Henry, and I'm Frank." Daniel drove along. Then he took out a licky strike and lit it. "You boys live at home?" "Yes," said Frank. "Yes," I said. Daniel's cigarette was already wet from his mouth. He stopped the car at a signal. "I was at the beach yesterday and they caught a couple of guys under the pier. The cops caught them and threw them in jail. One guy was sucking the other guy off. Now what business is that of the cops? Made me mad." The signal changed and Daniel pulled away. "Don't you guys think that was stupid? The cops stopping those guys from sucking off?" We didn't answer. "Well," said Daniel, "don't you think a couple of guys have a right to a good blowjob?" "I guess so," said Frank. "Yeah," I said. Where are you guys going?" asked Daniel. "The air show," said Frank. "Ah, the air show. I like air shows. I'll tell you what, you boys let me go with you and I'll drive you all the way there." We didn't answer. "Well, how about it?" "All right," said Frank. Frank's father had given us admission and transportation money, but we decided to save the transportation money by hitchhiking. "Maybe you boys would rather go swimming," said Daniel. "No," said Frank. "We want to see the air show. Swimming's more fun. We can race each other. I know a place where we can be alone. I'd never go into the pier." "We want to go to the air show," said Frank. "All right," said Daniel. We'll go to the air show." We got to the air show parking lot. We got out of the car, and while Daniel was locking it, Frank said, "Run!" He ran toward the admission gate, and Daniel saw us running away. "Hey, you little perverts, come back here, come back." We kept running. "Christ," said Frank, "that son of a bitch is crazy." We're almost at the admission gate. "I'll get you, boys." We paid and ran inside. The show hadn't started yet, but a large crowd was already there. "Let's hide under the grandstand so we can't find us," said Frank. The grandstand was built of temporary planks for the people to sit on. We went underneath. We saw two guys standing under the center of the grandstand and looking up. They're about 13 or 14 years old, about 2 or 3 years older than we were. "What are they looking at?" I asked. "Let's go see." We walked over. One of the guys saw us coming. "Hey, you punks, get out of here." "What are you guys looking at?" Frank asked. "I told you punks to get out of here." "Aw, hell, Marty, let him have a look." We walked over to where they were standing. We looked up. "What is it?" I asked. "Hell, you can't see it?" one of the big guys asked. "See what?" "It's a cunt." "A cunt? Where?" "Look, right there. See it?" He pointed. There was a woman sitting with her skirt bunched back underneath her. She didn't have any panties on, and looking up between the planks so you could see her cunt. "See it?" "Yeah, I see it. It's a cunt." "All right, now you guys get out of here and keep your mouths shut." "We want to look at it a little longer," said Frank. "Just let us look a little longer." "All right, but not too long." We stood there looking up at it. "I can see it," I said. "It's a cunt," said Frank. "It's really a cunt," I said. "Yeah," said one of the guys, "that's what it is." "I'll always remember this," I said. "All right, you guys, it's time to go." "What for?" asked Frank. "Why can't we keep looking?" "Because," said one of the big guys, "I'm going to do something. Now get out of here." We walked off. "I wonder what he's going to do," I asked. "I don't know," said Frank. "He's going to throw a rock at it." We got out from under the grandstand and looked around for Daniel. We didn't see him anywhere. "Maybe he left," I said. "A guy like that doesn't like airplanes," said Frank. We climbed up in the grandstand and waited for the show to begin. I looked around at all the women. "I wonder which one she was," I asked. "I guess you can't tell from the top," said Frank. Then the air show began. There was a guy in a Fokker doing stunts. He was good. He looped, encircled, stalled, pulled out of it, skinned the ground, and did an Immelman. His best trick consisted of a hook on each wing. 2 red handkerchiefs were fastened to poles about 6 feet above the ground. Fokker flew down, dipped a wing, and picked a handkerchief off the pole with the hook on its wing. Then it came around, dipped the other wing, and got the other handkerchief. Then there were some skywriting acts, which were dull, and some balloon races, which were silly, and then they had something good. A race around 4 pylons close to the ground. The airplanes had to circle the pylons 12 times, and one that finished first got the prize. The pilot was automatically disqualified if he circled above the pylons. The racing planes sat on the ground warming up. They were all built differently. One had a long, slim body with hardly any wings. Another was fat and round and looked like a football. Another was almost all wings and no body. Each was different and each was grandly painted. The prize for the winner was $100. They sat there warming up, and you knew you were really going to see something exciting. The motors roared like they wanted to tear away from the airplanes, and then the starter dropped the flag and they were off. There were 6 planes, so there was hardly any room for them as they went around the pylons. Some of the flyers took them low, others high, some in the middle. Some went faster and lost ground around the pylons. Others went slower and made sharper turns. It was wonderful and it was terrible. Then one of them lost the wing. The plane bounced along to the ground, the engine shooting flame and smoke. It flipped over on its back, and the ambulance and the fire truck came running up. Then the planes kept going. Then the engine just exploded, another plane came loose, and the remainder of the plane dropped down like something lost. It hit the ground and everything came apart. But a strange thing happened. The pilot just slid back the cockpit cowling and climbed out and waited for the ambulance. He waved to the crowd and they applauded like mad. It was miraculous. Suddenly the worst happened. 2 planes tangled wings while circling the pylons. They both spun down and crashed and both caught on fire. The ambulance and fire engine ran up again. Someone pulled the 2 guys out and put them on stretchers. It was sad, those 2 brave guys, both probably crippled for life or dead. That left only 2 planes, number 5 and number 2, going for the grand prize. Number 5 was a slim plane, almost without wings, and it was much faster than number 2. Number 2 was the football. He didn't have much speed, but he made up a lot of ground on the turns. It didn't help much. The 5 kept lapping the 2. Plane number 5, said the announcer, is now 2 laps ahead with 2 laps to go. It looked like number 5 is going to get the grand prize. Then he ran into a pylon. Instead of making the turn, he just ran into the pylon and knocked the whole thing down. He kept going, straight down the field, lower and lower, the engine at full throttle, and then he hit the ground. The wheels hit and the plane bounced high into the air, flipped over, skidded along the ground. The ambulance and fire engine had a long way to go. Number 2 just kept circling the 3 pylons that were left and the one fallen pylon, and then he landed. He had won the grand prize. He climbed out. He was a fat guy, just like the airplane. I'd expected a handsome, tough guy. He had been lucky. Hardly anybody applauded. To close the show, they had a parachute contest. There was a circle painted on the ground, a big bullseye, and the one who landed the closest won. It seemed dull to me. There wasn't much noise or action. The jumpers just bailed out and aimed for the circle. This isn't very good, I told Frank. Nah, he said. Kept coming down near the circle. More jumpers bailed out of the planes overhead. Then the crowd started oohing and awing. Look, said Frank. One chute had only partially opened. There wasn't much air in it. He was falling faster than the others. You could see him kicking his legs and working his arms, trying to untangle the parachute. Jesus Christ, said Frank. The guy kept dropping, lower and lower. You could see him better and better. Kept yanking at the cords, trying to untangle the chute, but nothing worked. He hit the ground, bounced just a bit, then fell back and was still. The half-filled chute came down over him. They canceled the remainder of the jumps. We walked out the people, still watching out for Daniel. Let's not hitchhike back, I said to Frank. All right, he said. Walking out the people, I didn't know which was more exciting, the air race, the parachute jump that failed, or the cunt.